Okay, well, hello. Buenos dias, everybody. Profesor Cañedo here, and it's time for another fun-filled nuts and bolts video. And in this one, I want to go ahead and tell you about talk about a new assignment. This is something new that I've added to the to the class. Um, I've used variations of it for the 141 class and for all my and for my gross month classes too. But I hadn't had it actually for the 142 class until this semester, and it's something that goes along with a lot of stuff that's really being utilized in a vast majority of the Southwestern class. That's the idea of something called an SLO, or student learning outcome, or student learning assessment. But even though the name itself sounds like a mouthful, it sounds daunting. It's not really a it's not really a major, extensive exercise compared to the other assignments like the book review, the Chicano literature review, and the the Chicano Literature Review, the EBSCO article assignment, and also the U.S.-Mexico War assignment. It's a simple exercise in which I want you to take a look at some documents pertaining to a topic which correlates to the about the second half of the session, and we get into issues on U.S. labor, which excuse me, everybody. We get into issues which dovetail with what Cesar Chavez is doing with the Chicano movement with respect to the issue of farm labor. And uh, and in fact, without further ado, let me go ahead and open up the assignments section right now, and let's go ahead and delve deeper into what this SLO is all about, what it entails, what you have to do, how to submit it, and all of that fun stuff. So let's click assignments. All right, and let's go ahead and scroll down here to the U.S. Labor Studies SLO. So the 1930s was, of course, a pivotal era for the United States on many levels. Of course, we've got a film coming up pretty soon on the Great Depression, and during the Great Depression, of course, the U.S. labor movement really began to go into high gear. There was strikes, demonstrations, sit-down strikes, and a lot of these issues were very influential in terms of the shaping of the of Chicano organizing, especially when we come into the early stages of the UFW and Cesar Chavez. In fact, Cesar Chavez, if he were still here today, he would tell you that what a lot of the workers did in Detroit and Dearborn with respect to the auto industry, the first signs of the United Auto Workers, he would tell you that what those guys did back then in the 1930s was a direct influence on what he and the UFW and Dolores Huerta were. Were doing in the 1960s. So I want you to take a look at a series of documents pertaining to the U.S. labor movement of the 1930s, and all you have to do is look over them, analyze them, and in essence, draw your own conclusions. And keep in mind, everybody, that unlike all the other assignments that are due on Thursdays, this one has a unique due date. It's Monday, October 10th. So please be aware of that, everybody. Don't make the mistaken assumption that all the assignments are due on Thursdays. The vast majority of them are, but this one kind of sneaks in a bit in that it's due on a Monday. So just be aware of that, and I'll of course give you reminders as we get closer to the October 10th due date. So let's go ahead and open up the file. I've got a tab right here that's already open. So let's check it out. So what you have to do is read and view a set of what are called primary sources related to one historical period or event, and we're talking about the U.S. labor movement in the mid 1930s. That's the historical event we're going to be looking at. Number two, analyze and synthesize these sources in response to an historical thesis or question. I'll explain what that is in just a second. The third thing you're to do is to analyze cause or consequence of the event represented by the source. In other words, what led to this event happening, and what are the results of this happening. So either or, you can talk about either something that led to what created this event, or talk about something that's a result, an after effect of this event. And fourth thing you're to do is to describe one important person involved in this event and explain his or her significance in this event. So in the in this event in the mid 1930s with the U.S. in U.S. labor history, talk about one important person and how he or she was very important. So so let me go ahead and scroll down here a little bit. So don't worry about this information right here. I'm going to come back to it in just a bit. Here's just some more instructions. So let me skip these instructions. I'm going to come back to them in a second. I think the easiest thing for me to do is is to show you the sources right now, and then we'll backtrack and I'll show you how to type in your answers to Blackboard. So again, don't worry about this stuff right here. Let's jump over to these sources. Okay, what I have also for you on this assignment worksheet are what I call 5 primary sources. These are items which took place, which were written or were spoken during the time that this event happened. And the event we're talking about here are the sit-down strikes for the auto industry in 1936 and into early 1937. I have 5 documents which pertain to those events. That is, these are events that pertain to what actually happened. That is, they were written back in those days, or these are testimony from eyewitnesses back in those days. I have 2 written statements and 3 photos. So those are the 5 sources I want you to look at. The first source is from the Nation magazine in 1936. One of the events that took place was a series of the big series of events that took place were a series of sit-down strikes. People just they were protesting low wages, layoffs, speed ups on the line, bad working conditions, all the stuff which of course prompts people to go on strike, walk off the job, call in sick, those types of protest actions. So in 1936, for the Nation magazine, the Nation magazine is still around to this day. Since the 1860s, they've been writing about progressive issues, and they're still around to today. And in 1936, Louis Adamic, he wrote an article about these sit-down strikes which took place at the Firestone Rubber and Goodyear tire plant. So here's an abstract of an article that he wrote, and and he's basically talking about what a sit-down strike does. So he's got about 10 points right here in which writing in 1936, he's talking about what the sit-down strike is supposed to accomplish. For example, in point 3, he talks about how the sit-down strike is reverse of an ordinary strike. A man does not walk out. He stays on the job. He just doesn't work. In point 4, he talks about what the wives wives do. In that, in essence, they view these sit-down strikes more favorably than general strikes, because general strikes sometimes can be violent and dangerous affairs and could have some tragic consequences. In point 6, he talks about the fact that the sit-down strike gives the work and mass production industries a vital sense of importance that cannot be overemphasized. And then in point 10, he talks about how the sit-down strike is a social affair. The workers get to talk to each other. So if they were on the job, they just did their own thing. The one guy didn't talk to the other guy. That guy didn't talk to another guy. So they just did their own thing. But when a sit-down strike, what do? They have coffee. They read the newspaper, and they talk to each other. So one guy. So in this point 10 that Louis Adamic is saying, he's saying that. That he found out that one of his colleagues is from Poland, and he didn't know that. And maybe there was an African American guy in the job. Maybe they didn't like he didn't like him because, of course, he was because of his color. But they had the same ideas, the same issues. So definitely sense of community and continuity that results from a sit-down strike. So that's source 1, in which Louis Adamic talks about. He gives a breakdown of what are some of the things that happens in a sit-down strike. Source 2 is an interview with Janora Dollinger. She was part of the United Auto Workers Women's Emergency Brigade, and in a 1995 interview, she talks about what happened in the sit-down strikes and how conditions in Flint, Michigan, another major auto town. Of course, this was the setting for the first major film by Michael Moore, Roger and Me, that came out in the late 1980s. Moore talked about how Flint was devastated when General Motors left town. So a lot of labor issues in the late 80s. Of course, these things that happened in 1930. So Janora Dollinger talks extensively about what happened on the job. She goes into a lot of detail about how conditions were terrible. That that the workers were getting injured on the job, and that GM essentially ran the place like it was a gulag. That is, it was comparable to something you would see in like Soviet Russia or Nazi Germany. Very oppressive conditions. So Dollinger talks about all of this. So definitely read this, in which, even though she's talking in 1995. She's talking about events that took place in the mid 1930s. So this definitely qualifies as a primary source. So that's a second source. So with what Janora Dollinger and Louis Adamic have, those are written sources. Now I've got three photographic sources. That is, these are photos which took place at the time. Here are some scenes from some of the sit-down strikes. Here we have some workers hanging effigies of, in essence, company spies or stool pigeons. Of course, GM and the other manufacturers did whatever they could to find out what was happening. So they try to infiltrate the sit-down strikes. They sent spies, and many times the workers found out who was a stool pigeon, who was a spy. And here the workers show their displeasure and their distrust of GM's actions by hanging these effigies of company spies. Here's a classic scene of what a sit-down strike looks like. Look at the gentleman here. It's not violent. It's not chaotic. It's orderly. They're relaxing. It's quite peaceful. Looks like they're reading newspapers. Maybe there's some coffee. Might be some donuts there. So this is a classic scene of what a sit-down strike looks like. That is, the sit-down strikes put the companies into a bit of a bind in that the workers aren't striking. And they're not causing a lot of, shall we say, outrageous mischief and mayhem. So these types of sit-down strikes were something quite new for the companies to deal with, and it really took the companies a long time to figure out what was the best strategy to do that. But as these sit-down strikes continued, it gathered more and more support from the communities and of course from the women too. And in this last source, here's a scene from March 1937 in which the United Auto Workers Women's Auxiliary and the Emergency Brigade, they plan a march in front of one of the Chrysler plants in 1937. So here's a classic scene in which the women are organizing and galvanizing, and look at their faces. Look like they're in pretty good spirits here. It seems to be like a lighthearted mood. So even though it's a serious issue, the women are quite happy to be part of it. So even though the women themselves didn't work in the lines like their husbands and their brothers did, here this gives them a sense of continuity and community too. In that they're joining their husbands, their brothers, their sons by standing outside and marching. So those are the five sources: the two written statements and the two written statements and the three photographs. Yes, photographs. So after you see all of that, here's what you need to do. Let's scroll back here to the middle portion. All right. So here's what you need to do. So there are four things that you need to do after you look at all of those five items. So number one is look at all the sources. That's what we did right now. So that's the first thing. Number one is just look over anything, all of them, analyze what you're looking at, and come to your own conclusions. That is, put your own ideas into what's happening here. So what I showed you right now, those five items, those are primary sources. But if you want to look at anything from beyond 1848, or better yet, Crucible of Struggle, to give you more ideas, you can. Those are called secondary sources, and any PowerPoint programs or even films to give you some more information, to give you some more background information, you can do it too. So primary sources means the things that I showed you, the five items. Secondary sources means other sources outside of that, including the Crucible of Struggle text, and also any films, PDF files, any other stuff that goes along with the class. So that's the first thing that you've done. Now the second thing is here's where you start writing your information. The second thing I want you to do is to analyze this statement here in red. Is this called a thesis statement? The statement goes like this: the sit-down strikes of 1936 and 1937 contributed to not only the political growth of organized labor, but also to the development of a collective working class culture. So that's a statement that I want you to try to prove by looking at those primary sources. So explain in 5 to 6 sentences how the sources prove the thesis statement. So what you're to do is you're to tell me in writing of something like this. The 5 sources indicated that a collective working class culture emerged because blah 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 or da 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 yada yada yada. You get the idea. So whatever ideas you have from the sources that you looked at, you can comment on all 5 of the sources or comment a little bit more about what 1 or 2. That's fine. So in at least 5 or 6 sentences, but you can definitely go more if you wish. 7, 8 sentences. That's entirely up to you. Tell me how those sources prove that the statement is true. Mention that the workers got to know each other on the line. They shared common values. They shared common ideas, similar beliefs, similar religion, things of that nature. So basically, you're to use your own judgment. You're to analyze, use your own perspective, and tell me how those 5 sources indicated or prove that this statement is in red. This thesis statement is true. That is, how do these things prove that a collective working class culture began to grow by the end of the 1930s? Okay, the third parts 3 and 4 are a little aren't as complex. These are more basic. So let me break these down for you. In number 3, tell me what was a cause or consequence of the sit-down strikes of 1936-1937. What were some of the events which led to this happening? What were some of the events which came after that? So again, in 5 or 6 sentences, tell me what were some of the things that led to the sit-down strikes, or what were some of the things that came out as a result of the sit-down strikes. And then the 4th thing you're to do is you're to describe one important person in the sit-down strikes, explain his or her significance. So of course, General Dollinger would definitely be an easy person to use, but definitely from some of the readings, and you've got, of course, we have the PowerPoint on legendary UAW activist Walter Reuther. So Walter Reuther, I'm sure, will definitely be somebody that you can mention as well. We've got a PowerPoint on Mr. Reuther coming up very soon, because as Cesar Chavez himself would tell you, that Walter Reuther was definitely a major mentor and influential figure that helped to shape and modify what the UFW's goals were. So, in other words, Chavez himself, he would say that the UAW and UFW, they were like brothers in arms. With respect to organizing and getting people involved. So those are the 4 things that you need to do. Number 1, read all the documents, and then numbers 2, 3, and 4, write down your answers. So to write down your answers, here's all you need to do. So let's get out of the PDF file here. Let's go back into Blackboard, and let me click the U.S. Labor Studies SLO link. Okay, and then now that we're here, let's go ahead and click Write Submission. And in the space for write submission, just give me your answers. Just give me your answers to steps 2, 3, and 4. So you can number your answers 1, 2, and 3, or you can write down 2, 3, and 4. I'll leave it entirely up to you. And of course, to number, you can click the number list icon right here. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, number 1, here's where you're going to answer the information on how the sources prove the thesis statement. So just simply type in the above sources prove the, if I can spell properly, the statement by, okay, and then just continue your thoughts right there. And then after you're done, click enter, and then you're ready for answer 2. Answer 2 is where you tell me what was a cause or a consequence of the sit-down strikes of the mid-1930s. Some of the major causes of the sit-down strikes include blah, blah, blah. And finally, last but not least, here's where you tell me one important historical figure from the sit-down strike. One of the most important figures of this era was And you can Janora Dollinger, Walter Reuther, or if anyone else stands out to you, especially as you come across the go through the Crucible of Struggle reading, you can definitely indicate that there. So there you have it, everybody. That's how you complete this SLO. So for this one, don't send me a file. Send me a file or attachments for the other assignments, but not for this one. For this assignment, just simply type in your answers directly into a Blackboard. Okay, and once you're done, just click submit, and you're ready to go. And again, for this one, don't give me a file. Just type your answers right into here. But for all your other assignments, such as the EBSCO review, the Chicano literature review, of course, you'll find your files. You'll attach your files by clicking the Browse My Computer button. But you don't have to do this for this assignment. What you write in here, that's all you really need to do. So I hope this video is helpful. Again, any concerns or questions about anything, you know how to reach me. Definitely get in touch with me. Message for Professor. And I think I've got two more nuts and bolts videos about about some of the assignments, so I'll definitely get those to you within the next few days for sure, by the beginning to middle part of the 4th week. All right, everybody, that's it from here. You guys take care, and I'll come back with at least a couple more nuts and bolts videos before too long.